Hey guys, this is Tauna. Today we're going to be going through my Abzan Armor $50 upgrade guide, but this one's a little bit different. We're still capping ourselves at that $50 or a little bit over at the moment. It's about 54 through 50-ish, 54 I think it is. But we are changing the deck up a lot more than I usually do. Usually when I'm doing additions, it's only around $10, 10 cards change, 15 cards change kind of thing, to kind of take it up, make it more powerful and stuff. But this time around, I wanted to, one, make it more powerful, definitely. But I also wanted to kind of give the Precon a little bit more identity, because while it's great and it's got that called Toughness Matters thing, it's also got a couple other side themes, like, you know, side theme of defenders, side theme of +1/+1 counters, side theme of life gain and stuff. I want to kind of tie it all together and also focus more on an actual tribal deck, because I think that it's a very interesting kind of mechanic, the whole, you know, toughness matters stuff, and it suits the tree folk incredibly well. And a tree folk precon, like, you know, a toughness matters precon just suits treecon incredibly, and I'm actually kind of really wish that it had been just a tree precon, which I think would be really cool. But let's go through it. So this is, again, kind of capping ourselves at that. It's 54 sitting at the moment, unfortunately, but I don't think that's kind of too bad. Like, you know, it's just a little bit extra. But given the amount of changes we've got in here, I think that it's kind of excusable. And again, we're kind of doing a lot of moving around, especially around the creatures, specifically around the creatures. Now, why have I gone this kind of heavy into it? The initial precon is like, you know, as I said, a little bit all over the place, especially with, like, you know, like defenders and stuff like that. And the issue with kind of defenders is, while they are great, you need more things to kind of support them. Otherwise, you're sitting there with this big wall that you then you're not able to do stuff with. I think there's like 2 or 3 things within the initial precon that have the option of being able to give your defenders attacking. Actually, I think it might be only be, yeah, I think there's only 2 or 3 that can give your defenders the option of being able to attack, which is just not okay in my opinion. Like, I'd rather kind of focus more on, you know, these big things, these things with big butts that can then attack, even if you don't have the option of having, you know, getting rid of that defend attack. So let's go through. The first big change here is that I've changed the commander. Now, you do not need to necessarily change the commander here. Felithar or Baitor are still going to work fine. They're still going to be okay with it. But I personally am a big fan of Doran. And I think that Doran kind of suits the deck a little bit more here, but Felithar kind of works kind of just as well. Doran just gives this other option. So to kind of compare the two, Doran here is obviously a tree folk, and makes it so each creature assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. Now, if we bring up Felithar, you will notice a big difference here. So Felithar is steadfast here. This one here, this is each creature you control. That you control is a huge change, because Felithar is just affecting your creatures, and all your creatures can do this, right? Meanwhile, Doran is literally just changing the way the game works, because now every creature, your creatures and opponent's creatures, are all going to deal damage equal to their toughness. And you know what? If your opponent has, like, you know, big dragons, or, you know, dinosaurs, or there's a lot of creatures out there that are going to have their power be bigger than their toughness, or just not going to have anywhere near as toughness as our deck, because our deck is just big tree folk, bulky tree folk with, you know, big butts. It's going to be really great to do this, because now everything instantly is going to be more kind of beneficial towards us, especially when we're attacking. So let's go through my additions here. Now, obviously, I'm doing this video a little bit differently to the one I did previously, where I'm not doing a slideshow this time around. Let me know what you guys think, comparing this to like a slideshow one, if you guys prefer this version or if you prefer the slideshow version. So first up, our first addition here is Treefolk Harbinger. It's going to give us a tutor. We can tutor up a Treefolk or a forest, put it onto the top of our library. That's great, right? Like, this is easily a great turn one play to be able to find whatever tree folk you want in your deck, to be able to kind of put them up to the top. It's probably going to be like Fangorn or something like that because he's going to work incredibly well with the deck, but there's a lot of really great things that can work here. We've got Bosk Barnet here, making our tree folk cheaper and our shamans cheaper. Lignify. Okay. So we didn't necessarily need more removal, but this is just amazing. I just love the idea of this within this deck because now our deck turns other people into tree folks, turns a different creature, whether it's, most likely not one of ours, but an opponent's creature into a tree folk. I just love that as a removal to just remove their abilities and stuff, especially because then the opponent's going to have to kill them off somehow, remove their creature somehow, or just remove the aura. It's a great removal compared to something that, potentially means that their creature just goes to the graveyard and then they can bring it back from there. We've got McCready. We're going to have a fair few creatures in here that are going to have power 2 or less. Boom. Now all of a sudden they all have Skulk, which means they can't be blocked by creatures with greater power. If we've got a 0 power thing, there is nothing that has lower power than a greater than that. Like, most creatures are going to have at least 1 power. So now we can skulk through, we can get in those hits. I just think this is a great card even if in the base precon, if you want to upgrade the base precon, there's going to be a great card. As well as this other drain is good too, like giving us some life gain in there. We don't have a huge amount of life gain synergy in the deck. I did keep a little bit of that because the Lord of the Rings tree folk stuff kind of synergized well with it, as well as, if we're building up these walls, building up our life at the same time is good. All right, we got Black Poplar Shaman. So this is a tree folk shaman that makes it so we can regenerate another tree folk. Just counter removal, someone goes to remove our commander or something like that. You can pay 3 and regenerate them. Boom. That's going to be great. Great anti kind of removal there. We've got Cultivate. I was actually surprised, really, really surprised by the fact that in the initial precon, there was not much, if any, ramp. Like, I'm bringing up the precon here on the side, and there was just not much ramp at all, which is weird. I think Cultivate kind of suits a deck well here. We've got Herald's Horn. Because of the fact that we're playing a tribal deck, and if you wanted to cut a card to bring it below that kind of $50 upgrades, this is the card to probably cut. Because we're playing a tribal / kindred deck, we can add in now some of these cards that kind of synergize well with this. This is going to make it so we can reduce the cost of our tree folk, as well as make it so we can potentially draw a card if it is a tree folk on the top of our deck. We've got Hartley the Sun's Heart. Now, typically I am not a big, supporter of planeswalkers. I'm not a huge supporter of planeswalkers, but she is great in this deck for making it so that each creature, assigns that toughness power, then it assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. Also, life gain. Also, because of the way this deck is built, we are going to have, again, heaps of tree folk, heaps of walls, heaps of big blockers. We can protect our Hartley. I'm probably butchering that. We can protect her a lot better than a lot of other decks can. So I think that personally, she suits the deck rather well here. We've got Patchwork Banner, an amazing mana rock, also buffs up our tree folk. We've got 6, who has reach, and then whenever you attack, mill 3, put a land from them into your hand, and then also able to do retrace from our graveyard. Now, one thing I didn't add into here is Maskwood Nexus. Maybe that's going to be a good idea. You could potentially drop like a Patchwork Banner or a Herald's Horn for Maskwood Nexus, because I did keep some of and added some more non-tree folk creatures just because I felt like they suited the deck well. But also, I didn't want to make it so that every single thing was a tree folk necessarily. My friend Jackson likes to make fun of the fact that I tend to add Maskwood Nexus into a lot of decks. In here, it would kind of suit, but I don't think it's 100% necessary. We're going tree folk tribal, but it's not necessarily because of the fact they're tree folk. It's also because of the fact that they just suit our game plan of big toughness well. We got tree folk Umbra. Yeah, I think that's pretty well explained there. We've got Victimize, so we have ways for things to be able to die. We want to be able to bring them back, potentially. This is just one of the best, in my opinion, reanimation spells. It's not obviously a recurring thing that's going to happen a lot, but you can use it. You can sacrifice something, bring 2 things back, whether it's your commander and something else, or, you know, you can sacrifice just, we've got still in there the new elephant creature that creates walls. Sacrifice one of those wall tokens, bring something back. You could just do great things with it. We've got Ancient Lumber Knot here. Makes it so each creature you control assigns their toughness rather than their power. It's great. Yeah, I think that just suits well. Bedrock Tortoise, again, another one that makes it so toughness greater than power. I just think that personally, in the initial precon, I don't think there was enough things that kind of did that. So there's just a kind of a bit more redundancy in here I added in to make sure that we're kind of supporting that a little bit more. As well as this gives hexproof, which is great. We've got some things to give vigilance in here. So, you know, hexproof goes along well with that because of the fact that it's wait, no. I was thinking of the untapped creatures have hexproof. No, just hexproof is great. As long as it's your turn, it's good. Still. We've got Dormant Grove here. So it's going to give +1 onto things. And then if that creature has toughness 6 or greater, guess what? That's pretty easy to do. Or you could manipulate this to keep it around for longer as the enchantment to buff things up. But on the other side, it's great too. Vigilance. Boom. Gnarled Grove Strider. So it flips over, becomes this Grove Strider. It's got vigilance. It's got, you know, give all your other creatures vigilance too. Leaf Crowned Elder. I actually managed to get this from somewhere, and I don't know where. It is sitting over here in my cards. I think it may have been it was on the list. I think it might have been on the list in Lord of the Rings potentially. But either way, it's a great card for this because of the fact that it's going to make it so, again, we reveal the top card of our library at the beginning of our upkeep. If it is either a Tree Folk or a Shaman, we play it for free. That's just great. We've got Nemata, Primeval Warden. So this is a tree folk, despite what the art shows here. It's hard to tell that he's a tree. If we look at the other printings, you can see he's a tree. He's going to create us some saprolings whenever creatures' opponents control die, and they get exiled as well. So that's going to be bringing in some graveyard hate for opponents. And then we can also sack those saprolings to either buff him up or to draw cards, which is good. We've got Avaya. I've talked about her a lot because I just think that she's one of the best options to just cheat things out onto the battlefield. And also on top of that, giving that trample. And it's not just, you know, trample to all our creatures. Anyone who is attacking one of our opponents will have trample on those creatures. We've got Tree of Perdition. I think a few people brought up the fact that they were surprised this was not in the precon. I am not surprised it wasn't in the precon just because of how purely amazing it is in Commander. You can tap it, you can swap its power with, its toughness with an opponent's life total. So their life total becomes 13. Your toughness on this tree potentially becomes 40 or something. It still does have Defender, which, as you'll see when I go to the cuts, I did cut a lot of things with the Defender, but I think that this is just an amazing option for it. We got Treebeard. As I said about the life gain, I kept a couple life gain things in here. He also gives us, some foods there. He has a decent body, as well as Ward 2 and Trample on him. Trostani, boom. Just huge toughness is going to get us huge life gain as well. We've got Fecund Greenshell. I love this little dude. He's got reach. He's got, if you have 10 or more lands, all your creatures get +2/+2. And then if him or another creature with toughness greater than its power enters, you get to look at the top card of your library. If it is a land, put it onto the battlefield. Amazing ramp there. Or it's just card draw. If it's not a land, then it goes into your hand. Whoops. And then I just accidentally closed that. And now it's buggering up. So then we were down into Fell the Mighty. An amazing removal. Yeah, I don't think I need to talk too much about that. Just another kind of board wipe that focuses purely on opponents and wiping out opponents. I think it's a great option to have in here. We've got Saproling of Kolfanor. So when it attacks, you're going to do that thing again. Look at the top card of your library. If it's a creature, you are going to gain life equal to its toughness, then lose life equals to its power. Again, we've got a lot of 0 5s, 0 10s, 2 10s and stuff. We're going to have most likely gain life from this. There's not a lot of things, if anything, I think, in here that has toughness less than its power. We got Tree Folk Protector. Timber Protector. This one here is a bit more expensive, and this is the most expensive edition I've added in here, I believe. It is $19.16. It is going to give all our Tree Folk +1/+1, as well as give them all indestructible. Now, forests also gain indestructible, which isn't a huge thing, but giving all of our Tree Folk indestructible is amazing. And then we've got Colfiner, the last U, Vigilance, Reach. Whenever it or another creature you control dies, you get to return a creature with lesser toughness from your graveyard to your hand. Just some nice reanimation there. Quick Beam, whenever it or another Tree Folk enters, you're going to give up to 2 creatures, +2/+2, and trample until end of turn. Fangcorn, Tree Folk you control have Vigilance, and then whenever one or more Tree Folk you control attack, add twice that much green. So if you attack with 3 Tree Folk, you're gaining 6 green mana. And then that mana, you do not lose that mana between steps or phases ending. That is huge ramp, huge ramp. As I said before with what's his face, the Tree Folk Harbinger, I do think that if you are tutoring up for one of your Tree Folk, that is going to likely be one of your best options. The Timber Protector is a decent one too, though, depending on what opponents you've got there. I wouldn't likely tutor up for any others. The Leaf Crowned Elder is not a bad option either, actually, but it's very likely that it's going to be Fangorn. 6 isn't a bad option. There's a few decent options here. Now, if we get into our cuts, so if I go up and sort this by categories and then go down to our maybe board down here, you will notice a lot of the cuts, and I'm not going to focus quite as much on them. I cut 1 forest because it had 38 lands. I like 37 personally, so I've just cut 1 basic forest. And then going through like the different creatures, you'll just notice most of the creatures are just the ones that had Defender, and that's really it. And then also synergize well with Defender. I cut some of those. I've cut the Nyx Fleece Ram that gives us 1 life at the beginning of upkeep. There's better life gain stuff that we added in here. Cut the 2 different mana rocks that for some reason are in here instead of like a cultivate or anything. And then, yeah, it's just mostly the Defender stuff. Or like the random life gain vampire that's in here because of the fact that it's got toughness higher than its power. Yeah. I think that personally, like, this is the way I'm going to take this precon. Like, having a look at the things that I've cut here, I am not excited about really any of these. Like, these are just all big defenders, and that's really it, when I would much prefer to be able to play around with stuff like, you know, the trees that, while they don't have Defender, they do still have all that toughness greater than their power and everything, and get to play around with that whole thing. So I'd love to hear from you guys as to what you think, and also, do you prefer this method of me showing it? Do you prefer the slideshow method? I hope you guys had a wonderful day, and goodbye.